Okay, Houston, we've had a problem here.
Houston, we've had a problem.
200,000 miles from home, 3 astronauts are floating in a crippled machine. Their moon mission? Over. The new mission? Just survive. The world held its breath, watching what many would later call NASA's finest hour. But how did it all go so wrong? The real story doesn't start with a bang in the vacuum of space. It starts with a quiet, overlooked mistake on the ground, an engineering flaw that basically planted a ticking time bomb inside Apollo 13 before it ever left the launch pad. When Apollo 13 thundered into the Florida sky on April 11, 1970, it was supposed to be, well, kinda routine. I mean, humanity had already walked on the moon twice. The world, once captivated, was getting used to the spectacle. For Commander Jim Lovell, Command Module Pilot Jack Swigert, and Lunar Module Pilot Fred Hayes, this was the 7th crewed Apollo mission. Their goal: explore the Fra Mauro highlands of the moon. For the crew and for mission control in Houston, it was another day at the office, an extraordinary office. But still, for 2 days, the spacecraft, made of the Command Module Odyssey and Lunar Module Aquarius, performed flawlessly. The crew even did a fun TV broadcast, showing off their little home in space. But they had no idea that a hidden danger was just waiting for someone to flip a single switch. The seeds of this disaster were actually planted 2 years before the launch. It all starts with a seemingly minor accident at a factory in California. An oxygen tank unit was accidentally dropped, just 2 inches. After a quick look, it was cleared no visible damage. But that little drop likely damaged a crucial internal fill tube, kicking off a fatal chain reaction. This damaged tank gets installed in the Apollo 13 service module. Fast forward to a few weeks before launch. During a standard ground test, a new problem pops up. Engineers can't get the oxygen out of that same tank. To avoid a major delay, they come up with a workaround. They'll just use the tank's internal heaters to boil off the leftover liquid oxygen. And this is where the really critical failure happens. See, years earlier, there was a quiet little design change. The ground equipment was upgraded to run at 65 volts. But, and you can probably see where this is going, the thermostatic safety switches inside the oxygen tank were never upgraded from their original 28-volt design. Nobody caught the oversight. So when the ground crew fired up the heaters with their 65-volt gear, the old switches were instantly fried. They were welded shut. For 8 straight hours, the heaters ran completely out of control, baking the tank's insides to over 10 degrees Fahrenheit. This cooked the Teflon insulation on the fan motor wires, leaving them totally exposed. The oxygen tank was now, quite literally, a bomb. A series of tiny, seemingly unrelated mistakes, a little drop, a forgotten upgrade, and a rushed test had just created a death trap. Okay, fast forward 55 hours into the mission. It's April 13th. Mission Control sends a routine request. Stir the cryo tanks. It's just turning on some internal fans to mix the super chilled oxygen and get an accurate reading. Jack Swigert flips the switch. And inside oxygen tank number 2, those exposed wires sparked. In a near-pure oxygen environment, a spark is all you need. Boom. The tank explodes with so much force it blows a 13-foot panel clean off the side of the service module. Alarms start screaming in the cockpit. Jim Lovell looks out the window and sees their lifeblood, their oxygen, venting into space.
We are venting something out into space.
The explosion didn't just kill oxygen tank 2. It also wrecked the plumbing for the tank right next to it. So now, the command module, Odyssey, is bleeding oxygen. And since its fuel cells need oxygen to make electricity and water, the ship is losing everything. The vehicle designed to take them to the moon and back was dying right in front of them. With the command module's power draining away, there was only one move left. It was a desperate gamble, but it was all they had. The lunar module, Aquarius. Mission Control makes the call. Abandon Odyssey and use Aquarius as a lifeboat. There was just one huge problem. The lunar module was designed to keep 2 astronauts alive for about 2 days on the moon. It now had to support 3 men for 4 days on a 250,000-mile trip back to Earth. The math just didn't work. Its power, water, and oxygen supplies weren't even close to what they needed. The crew shut down the command module entirely, praying they could save its batteries for the fiery plunge back to Earth. They were now adrift in a tiny lander that was never, ever meant to fly through deep space. So the crew is crammed inside Aquarius, and a new, silent killer starts to emerge, their own breath. With 3 guys in a tiny space, the carbon dioxide they were exhaling was building up, fast. The lunar module's CO2 filters or scrubbers were getting overwhelmed. Warning lights flashed. CO2 levels were rising to toxic, deadly concentrations. Now, here's the infuriating part. The disabled command module had a whole stock of spare CO2 canisters. The solution was right there. But in a mind-boggling oversight, the canisters for the command module were square. And the openings for the filters in the lunar module? They were round. It was literally the square peg in a round hole problem, but with the highest stakes imaginable. Their lives depended on making it fit. Back on the ground, a team of engineers gets to work. They dump a pile of stuff on a table, an exact copy of every random item the astronauts had with them. We're talking plastic bags, cardboard from flight manuals, and of course glorious duct tape. Their job? Invent a filter adapter, right now, using only those items. Working against the clock, they came up with a contraption that would famously be called the mailbox. Then came the hard part. They had to read the complex step-by-step instructions over the radio to 3 exhausted, freezing astronauts who had no idea what the final thing was supposed to look like. Miraculously, following the precise directions from a world away, the crew built this thing. They taped a plastic bag to the square canister, jammed a suit hose in there, and hooked it into the system, and it worked. Soon after, Fred Hayes reported that CO2 levels were finally falling. A little bit of genius and a roll of duct tape had just saved them from suffocating. Okay, so they could breathe again. But they weren't out of the woods, not even close. 2 more terrifying problems. First, they were flying blind. The explosion had created a cloud of debris that made it impossible to navigate using the stars. Worse, they were off course. If they did nothing, they'd miss Earth completely and just keep going. Forever. Second problem, it was freezing. To save every last watt of power, most systems were shut down. The temperature inside the tiny lunar module plummeted, and condensation coated every surface. The astronauts were cold, exhausted, and severely dehydrated, rationing water to just 6 ounces a day. To get home, they had to fire their engine, but without their main navigation computer, they had to aim it manually. In one of the most incredible displays of piloting in history, Jim Lovell used the Earth itself, framed in his tiny window, as a guide. He manually fired the thrusters while Jack Swigert timed the burn with his watch. It was risky, it was imprecise, but it worked. They were finally heading home. The last challenge? waking up the completely dead command module for re-entry, a procedure that had never even been written, let alone practiced. As they got close to Earth, the crew finally jettisoned the wrecked service module, and for the first time, they saw the full extent of the damage. An entire side of the machine was just gone. It was a horrifying sight. They then crawled back into the cold, dark command module, said goodbye to their lifeboat, Aquarius, and prepared for the end. And then came the final terrifying silence. As the capsule slams into the atmosphere, the intense heat creates a cloud of ionized gas that cuts off all communication. It's called blackout. On the ground, nobody knew if the heat shield was damaged. Had it been cracked by the explosion or the deep space cold? Would the parachutes deploy? They just had to wait. The minutes of blackout stretched on, and on, longer than normal. The whole world watched and waited. And then, a sonic boom rips through the air, and 3 beautiful parachutes blossom against the blue sky. Odyssey was back. On April 17, 1970, Apollo 13 splashed down safely in the Pacific Ocean. The crew was home. Apollo 13 is famously called a successful failure. Sure, it never made it to the moon, but it became an incredible story of resilience, ingenuity, and teamwork, both in space and on the ground. The investigation afterwards confirmed exactly what went wrong. That chain of small, overlooked mistakes on the ground. Because of Apollo 13, NASA made huge changes. The oxygen tanks were completely redesigned to get rid of flammable materials and protect the wiring. They also added a 3rd backup oxygen tank and an emergency battery, creating a safety net that simply wasn't there before. The lessons learned from Apollo 13's brush with death made every future space mission safer. It was a brutal reminder that in spaceflight, there is no such thing as a minor detail. The journey of Apollo 13 isn't just a space story. It's one of the greatest survival stories ever told, a testament to what humans can achieve when faced with impossible odds. The story of Apollo 13 is just an amazing lesson in engineering and the human spirit, isn't it? If you found this story as fascinating as we do, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss our next video. And we want to hear from you in the comments. What other great engineering stories, triumphs, or failures should we cover next? Thanks for watching.